Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pat Angerer joining us this week. And then after Pat Angerer, we'll have James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback and current Hawkeye on radio broadcaster, play-by-play, or Gary Dolphin's play-by-play. Pat is the analyst. Pat, a former Iowa Hawkeye linebacking great and linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts in the NFL. So Pat and me this first segment, and then Pat, James, and me, James Vandenberg, the second segment, and then Pat and I will close out the show for the third and final segment. Pat joins us via the phone today, and we've got a still photo up of Pat from his playing days, but Pat on the road and working and in meetings, so he was kind enough. We know how busy you are, Pat. So first and foremost, as always, as you've joined this show many times before, thank you so much. Secondly, I thought you did great. What was your takeaway from your first week, your debut with Gary Dolphin last week for the Illinois State game? How'd you do?
Well, thanks for having me. I was definitely very, very nervous at the beginning, but was able to kind of relax a little bit and get more comfortable with it. I'm very happy to get that first game under my belt because I really, like we had talked about before, I didn't even know what I didn't know. So having a little bit of confidence going into next week and just excited to continue to improve. There's a million things I need to do better, but Gary's such a pro to work with. He makes everything look good.
And Gary's been on this show many times, and I couldn't agree more with you. Timing is everything because you both have so much to say. I love your honesty and candor. You can bring it from a player's perspective. And I want to start first before we get into the game. A huge Iowa Hawkeye victory. The offense came to play in the second half. Hopefully that carries over to the Iowa State game this week as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, September 3rd. Of course, kickoff at 2:30 p.m. Kinnick Stadium. Iowa State visits the Hawkeyes. On CBS national television, first time in almost 40 years, the Hawkeyes will be on CBS on a nationally televised game, the 2:30 game. So, Pat, it had to be great for you. Two of your contemporaries from your playing days, Shonn Green goes into the Hawkeye Hall of Fame, Adrian Clayborn, and I want to get your takeaway. You talked a little bit on the air about them both.
Yeah, Shonn came in with me to Iowa, and then a year older than Adrian. Well, I still am a year older than Adrian, but just two absolute studs, but also two extremely selfless and just good men. No egos there at all. And I realized after I saw them for a little bit on Friday, they look amazing. And I realized I'm not ugly. I just don't have enough money. But it was so good seeing those guys because they were very selfless and played the game the right way. They're just all-time Hawkeyes and all-time men. And every time you stepped on the field and you had one of those guys on your team, you knew you had a shot.
Yeah, and you made that very clear on the air. And I know that James Vandenberg has special memories as well of Adrian Clayborn specifically. He came in as a redshirt freshman when Shonn was leaving. But I want to get James's takeaway when he's on next segment with us as well. So for you, when you talk about, seeing these guys in the booth, and I heard Adrian saying, yeah, we heard you. We had you on the radio outside, Pat, and you're doing great. And that's got to mean everything to get the encouragement from those guys and seeing you back in your stomping grounds. I got to believe you said you were a little nervous. It didn't come across the air, but what did go through your mind when you broke microphone for the first time on Saturday for real? You've done a lot of press appearances on this show, other shows, statewide golf tournaments. You know everybody. You and Seth Wallace are close. Heck, if you listen to the post game with you and Dolph talking to Seth, very familiar territory. But kind of like your playing days, you had to be, as you mentioned, you said you were a little nervous before your first game as a broadcaster. Very similar, I got to imagine, to your first game as a player, or was that a little different? What was that like for you?
A little bit easier as a player, which is weird. But I think as a player, my first game, I ran down on kickoff and got knocked out. So that didn't go as well as the broadcast. At least I stayed conscious through the whole game. But it was, when it started and we were live, it was, oh, hey, there's no turning back now. and Dolph, just his confidence and his beautiful voice, it just brings a comfort to you. And it took me kind of a little bit to kind of really feel comfortable. And then also, when you're scoring, 30, 34 points in the second half, that makes it a ton of fun. But I think it went okay, and hopefully people enjoyed it. I had fun with it, and I'm really looking forward to just getting more comfortable with it and growing every week. And Dolph's been so polite and kind, and I'm like, hey man, like you can tell me what I did wrong, and like I'm okay. Like I've been yelled at before. I don't take it personal, so hopefully, there'll be some pointers and we'll get some things fixed and get moving forward. But it was just such a fun game to watch and be a part of. And what a great start to the season. Like, what an awesome start.
So, Pat, when you said that about the offense in the second half, were you clamoring a little bit in the first half like everybody else for more offense, let's do this? But as a former player, it's the grind you down. The Hawkeyes, Kirk Ferentz, the philosophy, Seth Wallace, and that game plan was set in place. And Pat, or in this case, Seth was just acting it out with the players and other coaches. This was set forth, the game plan. Did you see this coming in the second half that, okay, here's the Hawkeyes going to beat them down, grind them down, and then the talent and the ability and the execution will take place in the second half? I don't know if you saw this kind of an outburst, but what did you foresee from halftime 6-0 going to that 34-point eruption in the second half?
And we were not too far off from having 2 or 3 touchdowns in that first half. There's just a couple things that really didn't go our way, and you could see that Lester was setting some things up. They were being really aggressive off the edge of their pressures. I knew he was going to bring in the play action. But yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to open up and we were going to score and we were going to wear them down. I just didn't know it was going to be that much and that quick. Getting out on that first drive of the second half and Cade making that play where he scrambled to his left and threw that nice little pass to Ortworth, like that was like, okay. And I think that kind of helped Cade out, being like, hey, I can do this, because really Cade hasn't played in a couple of years, and he's really good. And I think that was huge for him, just from his shoulders up. To gain that confidence. And it's cool, man. Tim Lester is a great guy. I've had a chance to talk to him for a long time, and he's super, super intelligent and he knows what he's doing, and he's very excited about it. And I think that just those adjustments that he made and the ability that he was able to set some stuff up in the first half that transitioned to the second half, it's gonna be a pretty fun year. And obviously that defense, I kind of like it 3 and out, because then I can watch the defense, because I'm selfish and I like defense. They are so fun. They're so fun to watch. Gosh, they're so fun, and they play so hard. They might be one of the I'm not going to say one of the best defenses of Iowa history, but they sure as heck play with that level of effort, and they've got a good opportunity to be really, really great and be a defense that Iowa fans remember for a long time.
Couldn't agree more with you, Pat. And I think from your perspective, being a former defensive player, linebacker, that had to make you feel good. And I love hearing you say that. And you said that in the preseason preview that you gave us a couple of weeks ago. So great stuff. Folks, he is Pat Angerer, former Hawkeye linebacker, former linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts, and now the analyst with Gary Dolphin's play-by-play in the Hawkeye radio booth. And so looking forward to this second segment of having James Vandenberg join us. As you know, James has joined me in all 5 years of this program, as we're into year 5 now on statewide television for this Hawkeye show. So I'll have Pat Angerer and James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, joining us for the second segment. So back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeye and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Pleased to be joined by James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, and now by James Vandenberg. And from previous segment, Pat Angerer held over, and then Pat's going to close out the show with me as well for the third and final segment. So, James, I said to Pat as we went to break, and welcome aboard for season 5, and thanks for joining me again as you've joined me all 5 seasons, Pat, the last couple. Pat and I were talking about a couple of guys that were at Iowa when you were there just coming in Shonn Green's case, but they went into the Hall of Fame this last week, and we were talking about Shonn Green and Adrian Clayborn. First of all, thanks for joining us again. Good to see you. And what are your recollections of Shonn Green and Adrian Clayborn from back in your playing days?
Well, first of all, I'm going to take a note here that Pat, just because he became voice of the Hawkeyes, gets to jump in front of me now, gets to close the segment. He gets to be the closer.
I'm not voice of the Hawkeyes.
5 years, Dave.
I'm the face.
No, we were just talking off air. I mean, Shonn Green and Adrian Clayborn, both awesome people, great teammates. But I mean, Shonn Green, I was saying, just so physical. I mean, especially as like a kid coming out of high school, turning around, handing it to Shonn Green. So physical. And Clayborn was one of the best athletes I've ever seen. I always think of like Micah Hyde could have played like any sport and probably gone pro in it. And Clayborn had that aspect. He played D-line, D-end, but he was so athletic at anything he did. So two guys who certainly deserve it.
Now, Pat, James had said off air, let's bring it on the air. That's why you were so good, because you got to play behind a guy like Clayborn, and you got to practice against Shonn Green. But you and James both said off the air too that Brian Allen had a big game this last week in the sack. Reminded you both of Adrian Clayborn. Talk a little bit about first the guys that played in front of you, and as you said, kept your jersey clean and made you look so good, Pat.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky. I had Broderick Benz, Carl Klug, Christian Ballard, and Adrian Clayborn. So I honestly didn't have to do anything except run around and make tackles and celebrate and look cool. And that's why my wife is still with me. So I owe those guys quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, there's some guys on this D line that are very similar. Some guys that I had the opportunity to play with, and Brian Allen, he's one that's got a ton of talent. And with Ethan Herkett's a heck of a player too. Like that guy is a stud as well too. And to be that deep on this D line is pretty impressive. You look at the games that Aaron Graves had, 3 sacks in the first half as a D tackle. That's not bad at all.
No, not at all. And James, actually, as we're talking about this now, if you've got the time and not a tight window, I'd love to have you hold over and give your preview of Iowa State with Pat. So we'll have the three of us for the last 2 segments, this segment and the closing segment, because Pat brought this up in the first segment, and I want to obviously bring it up to you, the former quarterback. What were your thoughts on Cade McNamara? You know what it's like coming back from injury. You know what it's like being on the shelf for a while. Confidence, you hear, oh, he's throwing off his back foot. What is wrong with Cade? And I thought Pat hit this well in the first segment, and you can speak to this even more so. It had to be a lot above the shoulders as much as how his knees, legs, and the offense was performing, not making excuses that he had to shake off some rust. But there's a lot going on there, wasn't there, James?
Yeah, no, I think it's all above the head. I mean, above the shoulders, I guess. I mean, rust is a term. It's like he's obviously very talented. He can do anything we're going to ask him to do. But he's been through a lot for 2 or 3 years now. New offense, all the rhythms that come with that. So I think going out, just getting a first step forward was a huge deal, and probably more than we're even going to be able to know. But I thought it was great. I thought there was a lot of rhythm there, and a little clunky in the first half maybe, but the ball just started coming out more on time, especially as we got deeper into that game. And to me, that just means he generally he's in a rhythm. He knows where it should go.
Yeah, and thank you for the correction. Yeah, in the head, above the shoulders. Yes, anatomy was not my strong suit, James. So thanks for the correction. That's why he's the quarterback, Pat, I guess, for all these smartness of him. But hey, can I say this to you though, Pat? As James Morris so aptly put it last year. Again, a former Hawkeye linebacking great at Iowa, and we'll have Chad Greenway on next week's show. So, James, you're kind of breaking up, thank goodness, our linebacking scheme here a little bit. But, Pat, is it true that James Morris always told me that middle linebackers aren't the quarterback of the defense, but the quarterback is the middle linebacker of the offense? Is that true, Pat?
I don't even know what that means. But,
yeah, I was going to say, only James Morris could come up with that.
I have no idea what that means, but it sounds good.
Yeah, he said it so confidently, like that's common knowledge, Pat. James said it so confidently last year.
I mean, when I played at Iowa, we just would ask Greenwood what the heck we're supposed to do, and he'd tell us all where to go. So that's kind of how we did things. I just called the plays and made all the tackles, and all the chicks thought I was good looking. So that was kind of my experience.
Agree with that, James? That was the experience with Pat?
Yeah, Pat just had to make sure nobody actually met him in person because they'd realize he was 5'10".
Very true. I'll take 5'10". I'm about 5'9" right now.
That's because all the hits on the field, right, Pat? It knocked you down in height because you just kept throwing your head in there like a pile driver?
Yeah, something like that.
So, Pat, when you take a look at what James just said, too, about Cade, and you mentioned it earlier about a lot of it just being in his head, and now the offense, should we expect that this week coming forward, a carryover? Iowa State's much more of a formidable defense. Had a good showing. Yes, it was against University, North Dakota last week, but still the same. Big rivalry game. I want to get your guys' takeaway in the closing segment about rivalry week. But What is your thought about Cade and the offense? Can this be replicated or just wipe the slate clean? Obviously, momentum's a big thing, but they still have to execute and get this done on the field. Pat, your thoughts initially going into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to continue to move forward. Obviously, when you think about the first game, we probably used, I don't know, James would probably know better than me, maybe 10% of our offense. You're not going to show a bunch the week before you play Iowa State. So hopefully it gives them confidence. I think the O-line especially is going to have some confidence. We're going to bring back, Seth Anderson and Caleb Young. Hopefully, I don't know if Seth Anderson's officially healed yet, but he'll hopefully be back in there.
Caleb Brown coming back from suspension. You're right, Pat. You're right.
And we've got Reese Vanderzee, who's 15 years old but has 2 touchdowns and is a stud right now. A lot of confidence there. So hopefully it'll keep continuing to move smooth, and you're going to see them open up a lot more, and there's going to be some new things that we didn't see on Saturday that we're going to see this Saturday.
James, your thoughts about that with a guy like Vanderzee, a freshman just coming out of nowhere, although Cade knew who he was and said, yeah, he looked like he was ready. A lot of carryover in the quarterback room this week. You want to keep that momentum going. A lot of people say, momentum's overrated. But, as a quarterback at Iowa, I'm sure you know this as well in meeting rooms. You're saying, hey, we did this. We haven't even implemented, to Pat's point, the playbook's not even fully instituted. How much do you think they used of last week and keeping some under wraps for Iowa State, James?
Yeah, I popped into practice a week ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe for something. And I have told everybody, like, whoever 15 was, he completely stood out. I didn't realize he was a true freshman. I didn't realize he was who people had kind of already told me about. The guy you watch guys like from a quarterback perspective who just are easy to throw to. And it's like, you watch him do everything. And it's like, man, he looks so easy to throw to. Like he looks like he probably was a really good basketball player. Like, I would assume he was very good at basketball. As far as the playbook, no, Pat's 100% right. And that's even probably more accented here or accentuated here just because it's a whole new offense in general. So the more you can hide when you're playing Illinois State, the better. To that degree, though, I mean, you want to go in with confidence. So I think we did that. I mean, we got the ball rolling in the right direction. We ran the ball. Caleb Johnson got going. We threw the ball down the field. I mean, momentum's a huge deal. All these guys can play. And so I think the ball's rolling in the right way. But me and Pat both know this week is just brutal. Throw any stats, size, speed out the window. Like, this is just going to end up being brutal.
We're going to get to that in the closing segment. So, James, you good with holding over? And you and I and Pat will wrap this up and talk Iowa State rivalry week. You good with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. So, Pat, you, me, and James will close out the show. We'll talk some Iowa State. You ready to rock and roll when we come back?
Sounds good, brother.
All right. Very, very good. Thank you. For Pat Angerer and James Vandenberg, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back to close out Hawkeyed in just a few moments. Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback great, joining me, as well as Pat Angerer. Pat, of course, former Hawkeye linebacking great and Indianapolis Colt linebacking great, now in the analyst role with Gary Dolphin on Hawkeye Radio. So, James, you mentioned going to break. We'll start with you this time, and then Pat, want to get your thoughts and takeaways. You said that this is a brutal week, rivalry week. Iowa State coming to town, 2:30 kick as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, September 3rd. 2:30 kick on Saturday from Kinnick Stadium on CBS National Television. First time since 1985, the number 1 versus 2 Iowa and Michigan game. Since 1985, that game, CBS National TV. So, James, you said brutal week. Coming off of Caleb Johnson's 119 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. We mentioned Reese Vanderzee, 2 touchdowns. Cade McNamara, 251 yards passing. And touchdown passes galore. The offense showed who and what they can be. Why brutal this week? Like you said, throw the stats, everything out, because this is truly going to be a rock'em sock'em game. I'm imagining your thoughts are, right, James?
Yeah, no, I just think I say brutal only because it's easy for everybody to get sucked into, oh, we have this, they have that. We play in this conference, they do that. All that literally goes out the window this week because there's a lot of guys on both teams that want to win. There's a lot of Iowa guys. It's just an important week. And so it will be hard no matter what we do. They will make it hard. They know us. We know them. Yeah, it's great. Like, it's such a fun game to watch and be a part of, but it doesn't always play out to how it's supposed to.
Hey, Pat, some of your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, like James said, there's a lot going on this week. I think the hard part is that you don't want to have too many outside things be involved in your life. Like, there's a lot of outside things that can happen this week, and you want to stick to the basics, kind of live in a bubble. And what you don't want to do too is you don't want to try to do too much. You just want to be able to do your job. But there will be adversity in this game. There's always some adversity. They're not just going to lay down, even if we get up on them or vice versa. Nobody is going to lay down. Like, this is a fight, and they've got to be ready for a fight, and they will be.
So I'll ask you, we'll start with you this time, Pat, and we'll close it out with James. Predictions for this game. Where are you thinking? I know you've got your analyst hat on, and you've been scouting Iowa State a little bit this week and getting ready for the broadcast on Saturday with you and Gary Dolphin, the legend. What are your thoughts going into this game? Where do you see it going? If you want to give me a prediction, please do, or at least give me a general sense of where this game is going.
Yeah, I mean, do I think that we have the team to beat them and we should win? Absolutely. But who the heck knows? You know, who really knows? There's a lot of moving parts here. I have watched a little bit of Iowa State offense, a little bit of their first and second down runs. They come in with a lot of 12 personnel. Their motion of the tight ends, getting angles. Watched a little bit of their game against North Dakota State. They came out, their first play, they came out play action and took a shot downfield. I think they scored in 2 plays. They do have an offense that has some playmakers on that team, but hopefully they get an opportunity like we had to in 2008 when we were able to take a safety at the end of the game on punt, which was the most fun because when you take a safety, you can pretty much do whatever and they're going to decline the penalty. So that was like the most fun thing. So hopefully we get that opportunity to kind of let it all hang out there. It turned into a little brawl there for a little bit, but that's always fun against an in-state rival to be able to take a safety there.
Is that your best memory of an Iowa State? I'm going to ask James the same question. Is that your best memory, or what is your best memory of Iowa State in your years at Iowa? What's your best memory, Pat?
Yeah, that was actually the first game I ever started was the third game my junior year against Iowa State. So that's my first start, and then also it was the opportunity to take a safety and get a little wrestling match there.
Bring it off the mats onto the football field. So, James, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about Iowa State. This show is called Hawkeyed, after all. But you've got to be impressed with what you've seen in Rocco Becht in the last year, and now going into his second year as the starter. And Abu Sama, the running back, as Pat had mentioned, they got a lot of stars on offense.
Me and Pat were lucky enough to get inducted into the High School Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, and we watched that Abu Sama guy run for like 370 yards in the title game that night. And
yeah, he's not bad.
Yeah.
He's not bad at all.
Yeah, like I remember we both were like, "Where's that guy going?" And then it's like, he's going to Iowa State. It's like, oh, yeah. No, but yeah, they clearly have talent. They've got it rolling. Their quarterback's done a good job, but that's going to be right into the strength of our defense, which is our back end. I mean, our front's good, but our back end is unbelievable when you think of just the depth and the experience we have there. So, yeah, I like that matchup, and I like seeing Caleb Johnson and Logan Jones kind of get that thing moving forward, running the ball. Obviously, we all like the touchdown passes, but you win this game probably by controlling the line of scrimmage, which we've done a really good job of in the last 10 years. So that's probably the same blueprint this week.
I love it. And we mentioned Pat in shows past being an Iowa High School Hall of Famer, as are you, and James Morris in a couple weeks. So besides the linebacker theme, and James, of course, you're a quarterback, but we're keeping that State of Iowa Hall of Fame theme going too with you and Pat and then James Morris in a couple weeks. But any special memory from you, James, Iowa State week of your years at Iowa that jumps out at you?
The first snap I ever took was at Iowa State. I mean, me and James Ferentz, we trotted in there together as redshirt freshmen. But the rivalry, that's the one time in Kinnick, I remember in 2008 when Brodell returned the punt to win the game.
Yep.
But we walked out just for that game, like it was raining, I kind of remember. And just the way Kinnick lit up. And that's even more than a Penn State when we host Iowa State, it's a big deal. And so that brings back a lot of good memories.
There it is right there. Good memories from James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, and Pat Angerer, former Hawkeye linebacker and Indianapolis Colt linebacker, now the analyst for Iowa Hawkeye Radio Network with Gary Dolphin. Of course, as we mentioned, Pat and James, both Iowa High School football Hall of Famers as well. James, thank you so much. Pat, thank you so much. So, James, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you, my friend.
Sounds good.
I appreciate
Pat,
it,
thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple weeks, Pat. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you.
Yep. For Pat Angerer, James Vandenberg, and my production partner, Greg Kajewski at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com. And to you, the viewers, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you.